So I'm here to describe the process that GRADE uses to develop recommendations or support decision making. The fundamental principles of GRADE are shown on this slide. That goes back to work of the GRADE working group, spearheaded initially by designs in order to make our process more understandable by Susan Norris, who made suggestions, and then through the working group at a meeting in Edinburgh with a design that Ingrid Falk-Itter put together. And this slide basically shows the entire process that we are also now further investigating in the DECIDE project. It starts with developing a clinical question. A clinical question is identified by defining the population, the intervention, the comparator, and the outcomes that are of relevance. So the PICO framework is a fundamental underlying principle for the GRADE process. It applies to any sort of questions, including diagnostic interventions. We start by identifying what outcomes are critical, important, and not important for decision making. GRADE focuses on those outcomes that are critical and important for decision making. We then conduct systematic reviews of the literature and try to summarize the evidence in transparent ways by using evidence profiles or summary of findings tables. The underlying principle here is that we assess the confidence that we have in estimates of the effect of an intervention, and we do that by using the GRADE criteria for assessing the quality of evidence. There are altogether 9 criteria that are shown on the right-hand side, and we assess the confidence that we have in the estimates of effect in categories of high, moderate, low, and very low. Randomized controlled trials start as high quality evidence for a number of reasons, but the underlying main reason is that randomization is the best way to protect against bias and confounding. It doesn't mean that observational studies cannot leave us with high confidence in the estimates of effect. Input from a panel or those who make decisions is needed along the way. It starts with the question development, but also is very relevant for assessing whether or not the evidence is applicable and adequate to answer a question. We then end up by making an overall judgment about how confident we can be in the estimates of effect, provide this information back to the panel. The panel then makes a decision or a recommendation, and typically in GRADE we separate recommendations for or against an intervention, and we further separate this into strong or weak, also called conditional recommendations. A panel then looks at what other factors influence a possible recommendation, and these are typically categorized into 4 factors that can be further developed and in which there are further additional items, but they generally involve what is the overall confidence in the estimates of effect, what are the net benefits or net harms, what are the underlying values and preferences, and how do resources or cost influence a recommendation or decision. A panel then formulates clear recommendations after having balanced these factors and develops clear-cut recommendations. In the DECIDE project of the GRADE working group, we are currently investigating with many partners around Europe and informal partners around the world, really, how we can make these decision-making frameworks and these decision-making processes more transparent. We are evaluating what are the best ways of presenting the information, and then how these decisions and recommendations are received by those who are the target audience.